President Trump will announce his new Supreme Court nominee later tonight. Yesterday, he tweeted this out. Looking forward to announcing my final decision on the United States Supreme Court Justice, 9 p.m. Eastern. So that's 6 o'clock our time tomorrow night. At the White House, an exceptional person will be chosen. So that announcement is scheduled for 6 p.m. as I said, local time. The president has narrowed down the list to 3 potential candidates: Judges Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Raymond Kethledge. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about these candidates with local attorney and expert Vic Bajaj. Nice to have you here, Vic.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so let's start with Raymond Kethledge. Who is he, and why does Mitch McConnell want him?
Well, look, any of these justices are going to be great appointees for President Trump and for what he sees the future of the court to be. So no one's a losing candidate as far as the Trump administration is concerned. All of the candidates, and there have been 4 that were mentioned yesterday by President Trump, which is interesting because earlier or later last week it was only 3. So we have Kavanaugh from the D.C. Court of Appeals, which is widely known as the most important and powerful Court of Appeals in the United States of America. They deal with some of the most germane issues regarding national security and other issues that affect federal jurisdiction. He has authored 280-plus opinions in the past 12 years while he's been on there after being appointed in 2006 by President Bush. He is an extraordinarily well-versed and published author, and that's important. Some of these candidates, Barrett, for instance, was appointed to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals only last year by President Trump. There isn't a lot of substance there to rely upon. Now, why is that a problem? The #1 goal is in recognition that any of these candidates will be fine for what the administration wants to see the court to be. If we understand that as a given, the #1 priority is the smoothest confirmation process.
Well, there's no such thing as a smooth confirmation process. Even though you're a strict constitutionalist, you're a great student, you've been a tremendous judge, you've authored books. The politics of this is they're going to try to blow holes in whatever they can. The question is, how many times has the current Congress said okay to these people? Now, some of them, all of them have to be approved at some point throughout their career. So let's go back to, so we have Kethledge first, then Brett Kavanaugh, and then later on the other top 3 candidate, I think, is Amy Coney Barrett.
Yes.
Some are suggesting that she might actually have the inside track because she's a woman.
Well, and that may be the case, and I would understand that logic wholeheartedly, and there are a lot of pros and cons to that. However, as I say, in order to have a smooth confirmation process, we have to look at the candidates and entertain the thought of who is going to have the least opposition. And that's what I mean by a smooth confirmation process. You're right. It's going to be rocky, and it won't be smooth. But how much time will it actually take? We understand now with the Republican control of Congress that it's difficult, if not impossible, well, it is impossible, for the left or the Democrats to stop the confirmation. The question is, how much time will the country lose during the confirmation process? Now, Barrett, as I say, is a bit conflicted, and there will be issues brought up, as we saw, for instance, Senator Feinstein bring up in 2017 when Judge Barrett was confirmed for the Court of Appeals. And in that, she brought out the statement that we hear now quite a bit, that the dogma lives strongly within you. When talking about Justice Barrett or Judge Barrett with the Court of Appeals and her religious beliefs. And of course, that dovetails back to Roe versus Wade. And that's where we see a lot of left-leaning individuals having a fatalistic fear of what the new appointee may have.
All right, so let's talk about Brett Kavanaugh. We've not talked about him. There are some people who say he is a man of stellar opinions, that this man makes some really interesting points, that he's more like Scalia than any of the others. Is that true?
It could be. And, you know, like I say, we've had 286, I think, is the official number of opinions that he's authored in the 12 years. We don't have a body of work to use on a comparative basis with the other justices that may be appointed or as candidates here. So we don't know. And that, again, Carlos, is what I believe to be very important. There is a reliable body of work that Kavanaugh has published. So therefore, where he stands on issues is not really up for debate. So you can see a streamlined process, hopefully, with the confirmation process.
Yeah, the demeanor of the candidate also is really important in these confirmation hearings, and quite often often these justices or judges don't like to be held, don't like to have their feet put to the fire like they're going to face here.
Yes.
So which one of these candidates do you think has the best demeanor for that sort of thing?
They're all great.
Are they?
And I tell you, when you get to this level of expertise, they have dealt with either an educational background, perhaps a political background, but they've handled significantly challenging cases. Once you are on the Circuit Court of Appeals, you see some of the country's most serious cases, most serious conflicts. And so to have a tempered demeanor is almost a prerequisite. Now, that may be utopia, because I know when I leave here and I go to court in San Diego court, and the man or the woman wearing the black robe may disagree with me, and of course we have to show our due deference.
Right.
But that is the temperament that you can expect, especially from an appellate judge.
Right.
More of an even-keeled temperament.
Now, there's another candidate here we've not talked about, Mike Lee. What do we know about him?
Well, Mike Lee has been mentioned a bit last week, and what I've come to find out is that he is also a member of the Judiciary Committee. So the meetings and conversations that the Trump administration has had with Mike Lee, who is a legislator now, and also a candidate supposedly by what we've heard.
Is he the one from Utah?
That's correct.
Right.
I believe that's correct.
Right.
And he is on the Judiciary Committee. Why is that important? Well, the meeting may not be to say, Mr. Lee, I'd like to have you as the next Supreme Court Justice, and we're all pontificating here. It may be, how many votes do you think I have? You're on the Judiciary Committee.
Right.
Tell me who's going to be the easiest horse to jump on here to get this through the finish line.
Of course, the overall thing, the big picture in this is the makeup of the court and the way the court will lean for the next 30 to 40 years.
Yes.
And that's what's concerning the left or the opposition to Mr. Trump as he goes through the process of appointing a new judge.
And that's absolutely right. And we've heard of a lot of very fatalistic conversations.
End of the world kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And let's be realistic. It's not that way. It wasn't the end of the world when the court moved towards a more liberal stance, and it wasn't the end of the world when it turned back a bit more conservative.
Why not? Why wasn't it?
Well, because as we look at precedent, case precedent, and what we mean by that is established case law that we must rely upon for future litigation and future decisions, it is almost impossible to turn over or overturn case precedent. So we talk about an appointment of a conservative justice and the fact that it may overturn Roe versus Wade. We hear that, or overturn some of the affirmative action decisions that have been monumental for the country. You will not see that. You will not see an overturning of such a monumental gravity of a decision. You will see it curtailed. You will see it contoured and perhaps massaged into more of a conservative way of looking and interpreting the Constitution. Again, on the conservative side, an originalist interpretation of the Constitution. What do the words say? What do they mean when the words were written and the signatures were affixed to the document? Liberal is more, how can we interpret the living, breathing Constitution for modern day events? So it's not a fatalist. We see it, we hear it. I, of course, get a lot of context from people in our community, one way or the other, happy or not. But at the end of the day, it's important to understand, these are not pawns. When we're talking about a Supreme Court justice, we are talking about a person who has now been anointed with tenure.
Right.
So tenure
for life.
For life.
Yeah.
It's just like a university professor. We've seen some tenured professors who have come under fire for doing outlandish things and saying this, but you can't do anything because it's so difficult to remove someone who's tenured. Well, now you multiply that times 10 and you have the tenure power of a Supreme Court justice.
Right. It's really interesting to watch that. And as you see them sit there during a State of the Union address where they don't applaud one way or the other, they don't cheer, they don't smile, you just see the power of that third branch of government that is so important to the present-day balance that we have in government. Vic Bajaj, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Lending your expertise to this very interesting discussion as we wait to hear what the president will decide tonight. California